We're going to turn to the book of Luke, chapter 1, if we could. And Jackson, I'm going to start on verse 5, okay? I'm going to forget about the introductory. It just talks about, it's about Luke and who he's sending it to. And but I want to get to I have found that this is about the Christmas. This is about the birth of Christ and all the things that happen around it. And Luke is telling the story about it, and he wants to make sure everybody understands it. So he had many eyewitnesses and other accounts that he took into consideration when he wrote this. So you can, if you go to court and you have two witnesses, you are exonerated from anything anybody else says because you have the witnesses that can stand up for you. Here we have many, many witnesses, so we can know for a fact that the accounting that's here is truth. Isn't that good to know that we're reading truth? It's not maybe, it's real truth, and that's awesome. Let me read this. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinance of the Lord blameless. That's an awesome thing right there. In the days of Herod, the king of Judea. Let's give you a backdrop here. At this time, there had been 400 years past. There had been no word from God. There had been no prophet. Nothing has happened. It's been a very barren time. There has been nothing. Nothing's happened. People were still looking for the Messiah, but they had nothing. Nothing was coming out. And Herod was an evil guy, and he was the king, made the king because of the Roman government made him into a king. Now we're talking about Zacharias. Zacharias, at this time, in the Judea, in this land of Israel, there was approximately, they figure, about 20,000 priests. Now these priests, their job was to do whatever had to be done in the temple. Now obviously they didn't have 20,000 guys running around the temple all the time because they wouldn't get anything done because they'd all be in each other's way. What happened was a certain number came for a week at a time. And you never knew when you were coming. You showed up, you were called and you came in. And you didn't know what your jobs were going to be until you got there. But you had to be ready to do it. It was set back. If you go back into Numbers, you find out that this was all created by God. This is how He wanted things to be done. And so here we are. We got a certain priest named Zacharias. What's interesting is Zacharias and Elizabeth are both from the Levite division, and it's good to know that they came from that segment of the people. But look at it, verse 6. They were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinance of the Lord blameless. Does that say they were perfect? No, but they were righteous. In other words, they sought to do that which was right. And they were blameless in that they didn't intentionally break any rules or regulation. They were just good people. Just like each one of you. I'm sure of it. Well, maybe not Olin, but maybe the rest of you. Ooh. He was looking at me. I wanted to make sure I saw that. But verse 7 says, but they had no child because Elizabeth was barren and they were both well advanced in years. You need to know something here. That was considered a reproach. When a woman was barren, that was considered a reproach. And when a Levite or a priest's wife was barren, that was a double reproach. Because there was a thing said something about if you don't have a son to carry on your lineage, you are cut off from the nation. And here, Elizabeth was barren and Zacharias was a priest that had no continuance in his family line. And they bore that reproach. And this is what I find is phenomenal about Zacharias, is he was blameless, as it said, and he was righteous. And he chose, I think out of love to Elizabeth, to bear the reproach with her. Because he had all the right in the world to just divorce her, get rid of her, send her on her merry way. And the people, the laws of the land at that time gave him all that right. He could do that. It was no problem. But then she would have to bear the reproach alone. I just think that's an awesome, awesome marriage they got there. Now it also tells us that they're well advanced in years, and speculation has it that Zacharias was born 70 BC or before. So we're talking a guy at 70s, 80s in that area, along with her being at the same. The King James says they were stricken with age, I think is how they put it. And I had one guy who was talking about that. That means they're walking all bent over, just old. Kind of like I am in the morning. This is amazing. This is a side thing. This is amazing because the angel says this. 400 years before, the last word that was shared is in Malachi, and it said this. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And isn't that amazing? 400 years have gone by since that statement was made, and the statement is still made then, as it was back in Malachi, it was made then. It's because God does not change. His plans have never changed. His plans have been from the foundations of the earth, as we learned when we were doing Ephesians. Those plans have never changed. And Zacharias said to the angel, how shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is well advanced in years. And on the onset, that would seem like that makes sense to think that. But this how shall I know it means, prove that to me. In other words, give me a sign. If you go and you look further, when you talk with Mary, Mary doesn't ask for a sign. And Joseph doesn't ask for a sign. They just believe. But Zacharias, it was beyond him. He could not believe it. He had to have a sign. And the angel said to him, I am Gabriel. That's the other thing. It's an angel. I'm quite sure that when you come face to face with an angel, you will know this if it's in this context. So why would you even doubt what his word was? If he said this is going to happen, I'd say, okay, let her go. The angel answered and said, I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God and was sent to speak to you and bring you these glad tidings. But behold, you will be mute. That's your sign. That's your sign. That's your sign. You want a sign? Okay, you can't talk. Do you know what that really struggles with a priest when he can't talk? Behold, you will be mute and not able to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their own time. And the people waited for Zacharias and marveled that he lingered so long in the temple. But when he came out, he would not speak. He could not speak to them. And they perceived that he had a vision in the temple, for he beckoned to them and remained speechless. And what do you think he was beckoning? Oh my! You know, I don't know. How would you describe an angel? It's just, but they kind of figured it out after a while that maybe it was the fact that he had, yeah. Anyway, the people, they perceived that he had a vision. And so it was, as the days of his service were completed, they worked for a week, that he departed to his own house. Now after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she hid herself 5 months, saying, Thus the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach from among people. And that's the amazing thing about this is this has so many different ways to go with this. It dealt with the faithfulness of Zacharias and Elizabeth. It took away the reproach. It tells us that no matter where we are, whatever we have, the desires of our heart, if we have a prayer, believe that God will answer that prayer. He never leaves a prayer unanswered. We have problems when we don't get the answer we want. But think about it for a minute. Would you think that Elizabeth and Zacharias would have been thrilled to know that at 80-some years of age they're going to have a baby? At first, it might sound weird, but I'm thinking about how Kathy and I take care of our great-grandson every once in a while, and by the end of the day, we're exhausted. Can you imagine having that at that age? It's just phenomenal. I'm quite sure, though, that God gave Elizabeth the strength to do what she had to do. It was his plan. It's nothing that God does is really the way everybody else would do it. He does strange things. I'm looking back. There's many women that this happened to. If I got it written down here somewhere, if I can find it. But let's think about it. There's Sarah with Abraham, that was old, and she had a baby. The daughter of Moriah could not conceive. An angel came to her, and she bore Samson. Hannah came before Eli the priest, said, I just want a baby and you can have him. And who came out? Samuel. Isn't that amazing? When the people that went through and they were persistent in their faith and they trusted God regardless of the fact they never gave up hope, but they persevere in what they think, the answer comes. And they have not only just normal, they have these women had great children that accomplished great things. Israel, what took place with Zacharias and Israel and Elizabeth is the same thing that's taken place with Israel, because they were barren just as much as Elizabeth. Israel was barren politically. They were barren nationally, politically, and spiritually. They were barren. They were lost. They had nothing. But God had given them promises. Many years prior, he promised that they would be his chosen people. Many years prior, he promised them a Messiah. Many years before, he had promised them that they would be the chosen people that would be lifted up. And God is faithful.